to Abstract Essay, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy to overlook impact of stress and anxiety in the workplace. Reframe your methodology for improved outcomes. No other than Dr. Frank L. Douglas. Welcome, Dr. Frank on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Well, thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I am an immigrant. I say that because this is so important these days. I came to America in 1963 to go to college. Came from Guyana. At that time, it was British Guyana. I came on an American Fulbright scholarship as an undergraduate and received my bachelor's in engineering, in chemistry and engineering school from Lehigh University. Then went on to do a PhD at Cornell University and an MD. So I'm both a PhD and an MD, trained in internal medicine and neuroendocrinology. Started my professional life as an academic physician, but was discovered by the pharmaceutical industry, so then spent 20 plus years in the pharmaceutical industry, many of those years as the global head of research and development of large pharmaceutical companies. On my retirement, I returned to academia and spent time at MIT and at the University of Akron. And as I tell people, I'm in my third retirement. My passion is helping individuals and the companies to deal with the issues of conflict, whether those issues are based on bias or a lack of good team functioning, is to help them to find what I call a better problem to solve and to improve the productivity by addressing things in a different way, which I call reframing, looking at things from a different perspective.
Dr. Frank Douglas, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you, thank
Well,
you. So today let's talk about the five effective ways to address healthcare disparities. So tell us, before we get to the solutions, how do you define healthcare disparity versus a simple difference in health outcomes? What is the crucial distinguishing factor?
well, the disparities lead to, unfortunately, bad outcomes. And by disparities, we really refer to differences in a number of things. Could be access, whether it is lack of facilities, whether it is lack of healthcare workers who are available, or whether it is lack of understanding of the different patient populations that lead to poor healthcare, in that people are denied health care. They do not get preventive health care, or they get the wrong diagnosis because people do not really understand, healthcare workers really do not understand the issues that the patient has. So those lead to a difference in outcome compared to the general population. And so that's what we mean by the disparities when we have these differences, as I said, be it access or just simply lack of care, cultural differences that impair the ability to deliver good health care, be it preventive or interventional, and as a result leads to bad outcome.
Of all the factors driving disparities like race, socioeconomic status, geography, or disability, which one do you believe is the most potent and persistent force and why?
I think that I think the two things probably go together. One, I think underrepresented minorities and economic factors. And I think those two things, unfortunately, become two very potent factors. Many times, whether it is in rural areas or inner cities, underrepresented minorities also have poor economic conditions. And in those settings, healthcare, access to healthcare is not easy for them. And when they do access the hospitals, etc., one, a lack of knowledge on their part on how the system works, and two, on the other side, those who are providing the care, a lack of the understanding of the culture and sometimes a lack of patience to really try to understand what is wrong with the patient. Those things come together. And of course, because of the economic drivers, often these individuals wait until their health situation is really dire before they go to the hospital, and usually they go to the emergency care because often they don't have their own private physicians, to whom they can address their problems because that costs money, and they don't have money, or they are living quite some distance and don't have the income to get there. So healthcare becomes a major problem for individuals who are low income, and also for individuals who are underrepresented minorities who often do not have individuals of their own culture who understand the cultural differences and who understand the problems that they're facing. So those are two very potent drivers of healthcare disparities.
Many people think of disparities in terms of access to a doctor, but what about the disparities in quality of care received once you're in the door? How does that manifest,
Well,
Dr. Frank?
there are two things that we actually do know. I mean, the studies have been done, and it's really very clear. One is that individuals physicians, after they've been trained, tend to return to the communities in which they grow up. And so if you have a paucity of native Indian physicians, or you have a paucity of Hispanic physicians, or a paucity of Black physicians, you can assume that there are going to be fewer of those physicians in those communities. So that begins to impact healthcare. The other thing that it is known is that patients feel more comfortable going to a doctor who they recognize from their own culture and particularly if they speak a different language. Language is sometimes a very important barrier in the healthcare setting. And many of the medical schools, as a matter of fact, in large cities, will really insist that their residents, for example, learn Spanish if there's a large Spanish population and they're doing residency. Because if you don't understand the language, you can't really understand the complaint. And one of the first things you do when a patient comes to you, if the patient is well enough to tell you what is wrong, is you try to get what is the chief complaint that the patient has. Now, if there's a language barrier, then you really have a problem. Many hospitals do also provide interpreters in order to get over that barrier. So the language, the culture becomes an important thing, and in fact, there is a low number of physicians, Black physicians and Hispanic physicians and Native American Indian physicians. So their communities are often at a disadvantage.
Examining the five solutions, Dr. Frank, let's dive into your first effective way. How does increasing cultural competency and implicit bias training for providers move beyond a simple checklist to create genuine, lasting change in patient interactions?
Well, the major thing is really sensitivity and understanding differences. If the patient recognizes that you are really listening and you are empathetic and you have an understanding, that begins to build a trust within the patient. And the patient then begins to feel more comfortable to explain what is going on. The fact of the matter is, unless the patient is in a dire situation where they cannot speak, and you're going to be rushing them to the operating room. If it's a medical condition, the history, as we call it, namely the description that the patient gives about what is happening, when it happens, what makes it worse, what makes it better, family history. Is there anyone in the family who has had that problem or the present had? So the whole discussion becomes very important from the viewpoint of the patient being able to describe what they are experiencing, their symptoms, and the environment in which they are, and the family history, etc. If the doctor does not have that, the doctor is at a disadvantage. And as a result, the patient is at a disadvantage.
Dr. Frank, what are your short term and long term goals?
My personal short-term goal is really to get to as many individuals and organizations as I can to share with them the importance of really looking at things from a different perspective when there is a problem. Because most problems, interestingly enough, most problems have an element of bias, whether intended or unintended. And if you think about it, when there's a conflict, invariably it's because the two individuals each have a different bias, a different perspective. So this issue about bias and prejudice, I think people only see it in terms of, racial hatred. Well, that is, pardon me, that is indeed the worst form of it. But bias, because of a lack of understanding of the other person's perspective and my holding on to my own perspective, hence giving me a certain view, a certain bias, that plays out. And so my short term goal is one, to have people have the dialogue. That's why my company is called Safe Haven Dialogues, that people, get to a place where they feel safe enough to have that dialogue, where they can express the way they're viewing things and they can listen to the other person to hear how the other person is viewing things. That's why my book is called Until You Walk in My Shoes, so that we each walk in each other's shoes. It's not just, the manager walking in the shoes of the employee, but the employee also walking in the shoes of the manager to try to understand, you know, what are the issues that that manager has that is giving him or her a certain bias, namely a certain way of looking at things that is biasing the judgment they're making. So my short term is to make people aware of that, and once you're aware of it, and you don't see yourself as, oh, I'm a bad person because I have a bias, but you recognize that as a matter of fact, based on my training, my culture, based on many things, I have ways of looking at things which are basically a bias. Some biases end up having a good effect. Some biases end up having a bad effect, but we have to be aware of it. Now, once we are aware of the bias, then can we work on that and change the lens, if you like it, through which we're looking at the problem? Move away from that bias and look at the problem differently. And so that is what I hope to achieve in the short term, is to make people aware of that and to give them the tools to do what I call, once you look at this from a different perspective, let's find a better problem to solve. And a better problem to solve is a problem which is similar to the one that an individual or a team is experiencing, but guess what? It's one which is shared by not just one individual, but is shared by many individuals. And let's focus on that problem, because once we solve that problem, it will be easier to solve the minor problems around it.
Good luck to your goals, Dr. Frank, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Who would like to be like me?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if I want them to be like me. What I would like them, what I would like them to
Who
do,
knows?
what I would like them to do is um, uh, to really pay attention to the perspectives, when there's a problem, and to recognize that people have different perspectives, and to try to look at finding ways in which to change that perspective in order to come to an outcome. One of the things that I learned early in my career is that a lot of times, we have a problem and we don't stop and ask ourselves, what is the desired outcome? And not just the outcome I want for this particular problem right now, but what's the outcome I would like 3 years from now? Now that I have this problem, if I were to really solve it successfully, what would it enable me to do and to contribute to others 3 years from now? And make that my desired outcome. And how does that make me what I call anti-fragile? Namely, how does, if I solve that, how does it make me stronger, more capable to deal with other problems? How does it help me to do that? And very importantly, how does it benefit others? Namely, the solution to this problem, how does it benefit others? And so what I would like people to do is to think about things, that way. What's the desired outcome? How would it make them anti-fragile, make them stronger? And how would the solution to that problem not only benefit them, but also benefit others?
Well, thank you for that advice, Dr. Frank. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
That influenced my journey?
Yes, please.
Yeah. The book that really influenced me as a young man was a book by Scott Peck. And it's called The Road Less Traveled, or The Road Less Well Traveled. I'm not sure if the well was in there, but The Road Less Traveled by Dr. Scott Peck. And again, that's, that idea of really looking at things from a different perspective and taking the road that is less traveled, not taking the easy path necessarily, but sometimes taking the difficult path that will get you to an outcome that will be beneficial to others, not just to yourself.
Thank you for that recommended book, Dr. Frank. And for listeners who are not healthcare professionals, what is one powerful action they can take as a future patient, a family member, or a community member to help advance in this cause?
The action you should take is not to be afraid to ask questions of your doctor or of the nurse practitioner, whomever you're dealing with. Many times, unfortunately, particularly for underrepresented minorities, when faced with the healthcare system, they are overwhelmed and they do not ask questions. Ask the simple questions. What is wrong? How bad is the illness? How many people have this illness? What are the medicines or other ways to treat it? What can we do to help? Either if you're the patient, what can you do? If any treatment is recommended, surgery or others, ask them to explain, what it is, what will happen, and after the treatment, how long will it take for you to recover? The simple questions that you have, don't be afraid to ask them. As a matter of fact, I would just simply say, ask them. It's because so many times people feel, they're talking to a doctor, they have to know medical terms. No, all you have to do is to ask the questions that you have in your simple language, your simple approach, and demand an answer. And I mean that. Demand an answer. If the healthcare worker looks like, oh, I'm too busy, etc., you politely say, sir, ma'am, this is very important to me. This is very important to my family member who is sick. Would you mind just taking 1 or 2 minutes to explain? and to answer my question.
Well, Dr. Frank, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to
Yeah.
them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Dr. Frank, this is a deeply personal work. What is has this journey taught you about the intersection of healthcare, justice, and human dignity?
Ah, I start with human dignity. If we really recognize and accept that we are all valuable, we're all created equal, we all have dignity. On my podcast, one of the guests said something that was just so remarkable. It was a wonderful reframe. Her name is Dr. Pham. She's a Vietnamese extraction, initially came to America as a small girl, and is an excellent psychologist. And she said the following. She said, the golden rule is not to treat others as you would like to be treated, but to treat others as they would like to be treated. And I thought that was just such a wonderful refrain, because that's about human dignity and telling everyone that you respect them, you value them, and therefore you want to know how they would like to be treated. Now, if you start there, then it's really very clear that no one would like to be treated poorly with bad medicine, not to be listened to when they access the healthcare system. So you start with that you value that person, you recognize that a person wants to be treated as a human with dignity. The rest follows.
Well, thank you for that, Dr. Frank, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your podcast, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yes, I would really invite people to listen to my podcast. It's called the Anti-Fragility Reframe Podcast, Anti-Fragility Reframe Podcast.
Yes, people, let's support Dr. Frank because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come, more and more empowering episodes of the podcast itself. So, Dr. Frank, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for the invite, and thank you for the questions. I really enjoyed the opportunity to share with your listeners.
Likewise. More to come, people. See you soon.